this video, we're going to look at creating these effects for the text. And in Photoshop, these are referred to as layer styles. Now, we've got a whole slew of layer styles. Let me show you how they work. We'll go ahead and add a layer style to maybe our subtitle here. So let's click on that particular layer, 7 fantastic ways. And you can always turn the layer off and on to make sure you've got the right layer. And then we'll go down here to the FX icon, and that is showing off the screen. So I am going to click and drag and move this up so that you can see what the list looks like. So we click FX, and we get a big list of all these different effects that we can apply. Again, these are called layer styles inside of Photoshop. The good news is, if you select any one of these, it'll load up a dialog box that actually lets you modify all of them. So for example, if I wanted to add a drop shadow to that text, I click drop shadow, and it defaults to the drop shadow effect. It turns it on for me, and here's my settings. But of course I can go in here and modify any of the other layer style effects as well. Now you can see there I've added a drop shadow. If I turn this off, that's what it looks like, and then I can turn it back on. Gives it a little bit of depth. Every one of these different effects has settings that can be modified, and you'll totally change the way it looks. So you totally customize this. I'm going to drag off the screen here just a little bit so we can see the text really good. In this particular case with drop shadow, we won't go through all of these, okay, but I'll kind of show you basically what they do. In the case of drop shadow, we've got distance, how far away the text is. We've got spread, which is really how focused the shadow is. And then we've got size, which determines how much shadow we're getting. And if you use size and spread together, I'll just give you some advice here. That can really determine how sharp and focused that shadow is. Okay, and if you want to, instead of using distance, you can go right over here and click and drag and move the shadow around. Okay, so if we decide we like that, we can also set the opacity for the shadow, which is really how intense it is. We can do that right here. Less opacity means you can barely see the shadow, and then more makes it stand out a lot. So just set it where you think it looks good. A lot of times a subtle shadow does the job. Okay, so that is the drop shadow. Let's go ahead and take a look at inner shadow. Let me tell you how these work. If you want to move to the actual effect and the settings, then click on the name of the effect. Okay, otherwise, let me show you here. If I just click on the little option box and turn it on, notice how I didn't move down there? Well, I'm still looking at the settings for the drop shadow. So if you actually want to move to that effect, make sure you click on the name. And I tell you what, let's click OK here. And I will grab my zoom tool and zoom in real close so you can really see what is happening here. So once we've got an effect applied, you can just double click on the effects, and that will also load the layer style box here. Okay, so inner shadow, you can tell what that does. It just basically casts a shadow inside the text. Drop shadow is outside, inner shadow is inside. Okay, we can turn that off. Outer glow, I'm just going to show you basically what all of these do, and of course you can go in there and play with it. Spread, again, kind of like focusing, and then size determines how far out that goes. And you can also click here to change your color. Okay, that's outer glow. Inner glow is very similar to inner shadow, except it's a lighter color. And in this case, even really hard to see because I've got white text. If I were to switch to maybe blue and change my blending mode from screen to normal, then you'd be able to see that inner glow in the blue color. Okay, now blending modes, that's a little bit more advanced. We'll look at that later on in some other videos, but I just wanted to show you what the inner glow looks like. Bevel and emboss. This is going to make your text look more three-dimensional. Gives it some highlighting, gives it some shadowing, and just gives you a three-dimensional look. Again, we've got a lot of options in here. I recommend that you go in there and play with them all. We are going to be covering some basic design stuff, and I'm going to show you how to make some real nice looking text in some of the more advanced videos. For right now, though, I just want to show you what the options are here. Maybe like a pillow emboss. You can just see the different kind of embossing that can happen here. Okay, depth, size. A lot of these effects, if you do them too much, they kind of lose their potency. So maybe something like that. And you can tell here that, just by taking some regular text with just a little bit of work, really you can make that text, really snap. You can make something that looks very professional. Satin makes the text look kind of shiny, but you have to really play with the settings here to get exactly what you're looking for. Color overlay, this allows us to actually change the color of the text. And really, these layer styles, way you can apply those to any kind of layer. So even if this wasn't text, let's say it was a picture of somebody, you can do a color overlay and add a hue to that graphic. Biggest thing on this, we've got the ability to change the color and the opacity, how much of that color we want added. And then we have gradient overlay, which is basically the same as color overlay, except we're using a gradient. Notice we're going from black to white here. We can adjust the opacity. We can adjust the type of gradient. In this case, it's starting way over here in the middle. So let's actually move that. We'll move the gradient over to here. You can adjust the scale, which is going to determine how large that gradient is. And if we were to select maybe reflected, we can also adjust the angle. Okay, so click and drag inside here to move and reposition the gradient. And then we use scale to increase or decrease the size. Angle changes the angle of the gradient. Okay, let's go and turn that off. Then we have pattern overlay, which is pretty self-explanatory. You have a large list of different patterns that you can select from. I click on any of these and I get a preview. And then click over here in this. Whoops, you can't see that, can you? You can click over here to deselect. Once you have the patterns opened here, just click over here to close them again. And again, we've got opacity, how intense it is, and scale. And lastly, we've got stroke. Stroke is just a line that's going to go around the border. You can have that go on outside of the whatever the graphic is. You can have it go on the inside. You can have it go in the center. And you can control the size of the line, or the stroke, I should call it. You can adjust the opacity of the stroke itself. And you can adjust the color. So those are the basics of layer styles. Again, in some of the other videos, we're going to deal with some of the advanced options there. But now you know what a layer style is and basically what options are available. And in the next video, we'll go ahead and apply a layer style and make some other changes to the 7 fantastic ways to make money online. I'll see you there.